The storm outside Miami's most exclusive hotel rattled the floor-to-ceiling windows as Zuri Sinclair pushed her cleaning cart down the eerily quiet hallway. At 2:47 a.m., the Oceanic Grand was supposed to be sleeping, but Zuri had learned that the wealthy never truly rested. Her AirPods played a soulful melody as she hummed along, the rhythm helping her forget that she'd been on her feet for 6 hours straight. Tomorrow she had an art fair in Wynwood, where she hoped to sell enough paintings to finally quit one of her 3 jobs. Sliding her keycard into what she thought was Suite 4247, Zuri pushed open the door and wheeled her cart inside, still lost in the music. She reached for the light switch, her hand freezing mid-air as voices cut through her music, low, dangerous, and speaking in rapid Korean. Her blood turned to ice as she realized her mistake. This wasn't 4247. The numbers on the door behind her read 4274, the presidential suite, and she had just walked into something that would change everything. Zuri's heart hammered against her ribs as she slowly pulled out one AirPod. The presidential suite was supposed to be empty, but here 5 men in expensive suits sat around a glass table covered with documents and blueprints. The conversation had stopped. Every pair of eyes was now fixed on her. At the head of the table sat a man who commanded attention even in stillness. Kang Hyun-jun looked like he'd been carved from marble. Sharp jawline, perfectly styled black hair, and eyes so dark they seemed to absorb light. His charcoal suit probably cost more than Zuri made in 6 months. "I'm so sorry," Zuri said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I used the wrong keycard. I'll leave immediately." She began to back toward the door, but Hyun-jun raised one hand, a simple gesture that commanded the entire room. "Wait," he said, his English accented but precise. His voice was like aged whiskey, smooth, dark, and dangerous. "Your hotel staff?" "Night cleaning crew," Zuri confirmed. "I was supposed to be in 4247. I apologize for the interruption." What surprised her was that she wasn't cowering. Growing up in Liberty City had taught her that showing fear to dangerous men was like bleeding in shark-infested waters. Instead, she met his gaze directly, her chin lifted with quiet dignity. Something flickered across Hyun-jun's face. Surprise, maybe even intrigue. "Jax, check her credentials." Lim Jun-seo, known as Jax, approached with professional courtesy. "May I see your employee badge?" Zuri unclipped it from her uniform, noting how Jax examined it with the thoroughness of someone who knew how to spot forgeries. "Zuri Sinclair," Jax read aloud, "employed for 8 months. Clean record." 8 months, Hyun-jun repeated. "And in all that time, you've never made this mistake before?" "Never. I'm usually very careful about room numbers." "What made tonight different?" The question felt loaded. Zuri found herself answering with unexpected honesty. "I was distracted, thinking about tomorrow. I have an art showing, and I guess my mind was already there." "You're an artist." It wasn't a question. "I paint, mostly abstract pieces inspired by Miami's cultural diversity. The cleaning job pays the bills while I build my portfolio." For a moment the room felt suspended in time. Hyun-jun had built his empire on reading people, but Zuri Sinclair was like looking at a painting he couldn't quite decipher. "Show me," he said suddenly. "Sir? Your art, show me." "I don't have any pieces with me. They're at home or already set up for tomorrow's fair." Hyun-jun stood, and Zuri was struck by how he moved, fluid power contained in an expensive suit. "Jax, clear my schedule for tomorrow afternoon. I want to see this art fair." The room's tension shifted. "Mr. Kang," Zuri said carefully, "that's really not necessary." "The meeting was concluding anyway," Hyun-jun said, which was news to everyone else in the room. "Gentlemen, we'll continue this tomorrow." It was clearly a dismissal. The men began gathering their materials with efficient precision, all bowing slightly to Hyun-jun before leaving. As the room emptied, leaving only Hyun-jun, Jax, and herself, Zuri felt the weight of her situation settling over her. "I should really go," she said, but Hyun-jun was already moving toward the suite's bar area. "Coffee?" he asked. "You look like you could use some caffeine." "My supervisor will wonder where I am." "What's your supervisor's name?" "Montgomery Sterling, but Jax." "Already handled," Jax said, pulling out his phone. "Mr. Sterling will be informed that you're assisting with a special request. Overtime, pay included." Zuri stared at them both. "You can just do that?" "Money talks," Hyun-jun said simply, returning with coffee that smelled better than anything she'd ever brewed. "And I have a lot of it." When their fingers brushed as he handed her the cup, Zuri felt an electric shock. Hyunjun's eyes darkened, and she wondered if he'd felt it too. "Why?" she asked. "Why are you interested in my art? You don't even know if I'm any good." "Because," Hyunjun said, settling into an armchair, "in my experience, the most interesting discoveries happen by accident. You walked into my world by mistake, Zuri Sinclair. I'm curious to see what else you might show me." The way he said her name sent shivers down her spine. This was dangerous territory, but there was something in his eyes that looked almost lonely. "1 cup of coffee," she said, settling carefully on the sofa. "Then I really do need to finish my shift." Hyunjun's smile was slow and devastating. 1 cup. But as Zuri sipped the best coffee she'd ever tasted and found herself drawn into conversation with the most dangerous man she'd ever met, she had the sinking feeling that 1 cup was just the beginning. 3 days later, Zuri was still trying to convince herself that the encounter had been some kind of hallucination. But the envelope delivered to her apartment that morning, containing 5 crisp $100 bills and a note reading, "For the art fair, HJ," was very real. She'd stared at the money for 20 minutes. Taking money from Kang Hyunjun felt like crossing a line, but her rent was due in 2 days, and her art fair sales had been disappointing. Now, pushing her cleaning cart toward the presidential suite, her heart was doing complicated things. She'd requested different floors, but Montgomery Sterling had insisted that special clients required consistent service. She knocked softly before using her key card. "Housekeeping." "Come in," came the familiar voice that had been haunting her dreams. Hyunjun was alone this time, sitting at the dining table with a laptop and phones. He was dressed more casually, dark jeans and a black sweater that somehow made him look even more dangerous. When he looked up, his face lit up with something that looked like relief. "Zuri, how was the art fair?" "You didn't show up," she said, then immediately regretted how accusatory it sounded. "I was called away on business. I sent Jax to purchase something for me. Did he find you?" Zuri's hand went to her purse, where a receipt for her largest painting was carefully folded. Jax had appeared at her booth, examined her work with surprising knowledge, and purchased her most expensive piece without haggling. "He bought Miami Nights for a lot of money." "Not enough," Hyunjun said, standing. "I saw the photos he took. Your work is extraordinary. You overpaid. That painting is worth maybe $200, not $2,000. "I disagree. You haven't even seen it in person." "Then show me. I want to see your studio, your other work." He was closer now, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. "Have dinner with me tomorrow night." "Mr. Kang, Hyunjun, and before you say no, consider this. I'm offering to commission a piece, a large piece for my office. The payment would be substantial." "How substantial?" "Enough to quit the cleaning job. Focus on your art full-time." The offer hung in the air like a golden apple. Beautiful, tempting, and probably poisonous. What kind of piece? Something that captures the essence of Miami, the collision of cultures, the contrast between wealth and struggle. His voice was hypnotic. Something only you could create. Before Zuri could respond, Hyunjun's phone buzzed insistently. He glanced at the screen, and his expression shifted into something cold and dangerous. "Excuse me," he said, answering in rapid Korean. The conversation was brief but intense, and when he hung up, the temperature seemed to have dropped 10 degrees. "Problem?" Zuri asked. "Nothing that can't be handled. Unfortunately, I need to step out for a few hours. Will you—" He paused. "Would you mind staying until I return? I'm expecting an important call, and I'd prefer if someone I trust were here to take a message." Someone he trusted. The words hit Zuri like a physical blow. "I don't understand. Can't you forward the call? Jax is handling the situation that's calling me away, and this particular call requires a more delicate touch." He moved to a safe hidden behind a painting and withdrew an envelope and business card. "If anyone calls asking for Mr. Park, tell them he's unavailable but will return their call within 24 hours. Write down their name and number." He handed her both items. "The envelope is for your time." Zuri looked at the envelope, clearly stuffed with cash. "What kind of business are you in exactly?" For a moment his mask slipped and she saw something vulnerable underneath. "The kind where trust is rare and betrayal is fatal," he said quietly. "The kind where a woman like you, honest, genuine, outside my world, is the safest person I could ask for help." "A woman like me? You mean poor?" "I mean pure," Hyunjun said, and the intensity in his voice made her breath catch. "In my world, everyone wants something. But you walked into my life by accident and asked for nothing. Do you know how rare that is?" Before she could respond, he was moving toward the door. "The call should come within the next 2 hours. Order room service, make yourself comfortable. I'll be back before midnight." Hyunjun, wait. But he was already gone, leaving Zuri alone with an envelope full of money and the growing realization that she was in way over her head. The suite's phone rang an hour later, sharp and insistent. Zuri picked up with trembling hands. "Hello? Mr. Park, please," came a voice with a slight accent. "Mr. Park is unavailable at the moment, but he will return your call within 24 hours. May I take your name and number?" There was a pause. "Who is this?" "I'm his assistant. May I take your information?" Another pause. "Tell Mr. Park that Nakamura called. He has my number, and tell him the timeline has moved up. He'll understand." The line went dead. Zuri wrote down the message with shaking hands. The words felt ominous, like storm clouds gathering. She was still staring at the message when Hyunjun returned, his coat damp with rain. "Any calls?" he asked, but his eyes were already on the business card. "Nakamura, he said the timeline has moved up and that you'd understand." Hyunjun's face went completely blank, a mask so complete it was terrifying. He read the message twice, then looked up with eyes that had gone cold as winter. "Pack your things," he said quietly. "What?" "Your cleaning supplies. Pack them now." His voice was calm, but there was urgency underneath. "You're not safe here anymore." "I don't understand." "Nakamura Hiroshi is quite a competitor. If he's moving up his timeline, it means he knows about you, about tonight, about the fact that you answered my phone." "Knows about me how?" "Hotel security cameras, staff schedules, phone records. He's been watching, waiting for a weakness, and now he thinks he's found one." "A weakness?" "I'm not a weakness, I'm just the cleaning lady." Hyunjun looked up from his laptop, and the expression on his face was protective, possessive, and absolutely lethal. "Not anymore," he said quietly. "The moment you answered that phone, you became something much more dangerous." "What?" "You became mine to protect." The safe house was a sleek penthouse in Brickell, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Biscayne Bay and security that would make the Secret Service jealous. 12 hours later, Zuri was trying to process that her life had completely derailed because she'd used the wrong keycard. "This is insane," she said, watching Hyunjun pace like a caged predator. "I should call the police." "And tell them what?" "That you're being protected from a man who hasn't actually threatened you. That you're staying in a luxury penthouse of your own free will? That I've been kidnapped by the Korean mafia." "Have you?" "Because I distinctly remember asking if you wanted to leave and you said no." He was right. She'd made choices. The problem was she wasn't entirely sure why. "I don't understand any of this," she said finally. "I don't understand your world. I don't understand why this Nakamura person cares about me, and I definitely don't understand why you're going to all this trouble for someone you barely know." Hyunjun stopped pacing and turned to face her. In the morning light, he looked younger, more vulnerable. "You want to understand my world?" he asked. "Fine. But once I tell you, there's no going back to ignorance. Are you sure you want that?" "Tell me," she said. Hyunjun moved to the window. "My family came to America when I was 12. My father had business interests that required relocation. He was what you might call a traditional businessman with non-traditional methods. Mafia. We prefer organization. But yes, my father built an empire here in Miami. When he died 5 years ago, I inherited that empire. And Nakamura? Represents a Japanese organization that wants to expand into our territory. We've been in negotiations for months. If he's moving up the timeline, it means he's planning something aggressive. But what does that have to do with me?" Hyunjun was quiet for a long moment. "In my world, we protect what matters to us, but we also target what matters to our enemies. If Nakamura thinks you matter to me, he'll use you to get to me. But I don't matter to you. We barely know each other. Don't we?" Hyunjun moved closer. "You've been in my thoughts for 3 days straight. I bought your painting not because Jax recommended it, but because I wanted to own something you created. I offered you a commission, not because I need art, but because I wanted a reason to see you again." His honesty hit her like a physical blow. "Hyunjun, I know it's crazy, but from the moment you walked into that suite, something changed. You looked at me like I was just a man, not a title or a reputation. Do you know how long it's been since someone looked at me like that?" "This is a mistake," she whispered. "Probably," he agreed, reaching out to touch her cheek. "But I've built my life on calculated risks, and you feel like the best risk I've ever taken." Before she could respond, the security system chimed, and Jax's voice came through the intercom. "Boss, we have a problem. Rosa Delgado from the hotel is here, says she needs to speak with Zuri urgently." Zuri's blood turned to ice. Rosa was her friend, her work partner. If Rosa was here, something was seriously wrong. "Let her up," Zuri said. "Absolutely not," Hyunjun said, blocking her path. "This could be a trap." "It's Rosa. She's harmless." "She's my friend," Zuri insisted. "If she's here, it's because something happened, please." 5 minutes later, Rosa was sitting in the living room, her eyes wide as she took in the luxury. She was a small woman in her 50s, with graying hair and kind eyes currently filled with worry. "Miha," she said to Zuri, "what have you gotten yourself into? What's wrong? Why are you here? Your friend Sana called the hotel looking for you. Said you never came home last night, then this morning Mr. Sterling called me into his office." Zuri's stomach dropped. "What did he want?" "He said there were men asking questions about you. Wanting to know your schedule, your address, your friends." He said they didn't look like police. Across the room, Hyunjun cursed in Korean. "How many men?" "3. Asian men in expensive suits. They offered Mr. Sterling money for information about Zuri. Did he give it to them?" "No. Mr. Sterling protects his employees. He told them Zuri no longer worked there and that he had no forwarding information." "But they didn't believe him," Hyunjun said. "They said they'd be back. And Miha," she turned to Zuri, "they had a photo of you. A recent one from the hotel security cameras." The room fell silent except for Zuri's heart pounding. This was real. Men in expensive suits were looking for her. "So you've been watching my friends?" Zuri's voice was rising. "Having them followed?" "Protected," Hyunjun corrected firmly. "There's a difference." "Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've dragged innocent people into whatever this is." "I've kept innocent people alive," Hyunjun snapped, his control cracking. "Do you think this is a game? Do you think Nakamura cares about collateral damage?" "I think I want my life back," Zuri shot to her feet. "I think I want to go home and paint and work my normal job." "That life is gone," Hyunjun said quietly, and the finality in his voice was like a death knell. "The moment you answered that phone, that life ended. Then change it. You're supposed to be so powerful. Fix this." "I'm trying. But fixing this means dealing with Nakamura permanently. And that means—" He trailed off, but Zuri could fill in the blanks. "Violence, death. There has to be another way." "There is. You disappear. New identity, new city, new life. I have the resources to make it happen. And never see my friends again? Give up everything I've worked for? You'd be alive." The words hung in the air like a sword, but Zuri was looking at Hyunjun, seeing something in his expression that made her breath catch. He was offering her a way out, but he didn't want her to take it. "What do you want me to do?" she asked quietly. "I want you to trust me. I want you to let me handle Nakamura my way, and I want you to stay here, where I can protect you, until it's over." "And then what?" "Then you decide. Whether you want that new life somewhere else, or whether you want to stay and see what we could build together." The offer was insane, but as Zuri looked into Hyunjun's eyes and saw the hope he was trying to hide, she realized that somewhere between the luxury suite and the safe house, she'd started falling for the most dangerous man in Miami, and that was the most terrifying realization of all. The call came at 3:17 a.m., shattering the peace that had settled over the safe house. Zuri jerked awake, her heart racing. Through the walls she could hear Hyunjun's voice, low, urgent, speaking rapid Korean. She'd been staying in the penthouse for 4 days now. The routine had become almost comfortable. Hyunjun, working during the day, shared dinners and conversation that felt dangerously close to normal. But the 3 a.m. phone call reminded her that their bubble was just an illusion. Zuri crept toward the door, pressing her ear against the wood. Hyunjun's voice was getting louder, more agitated. She caught fragments. "Impossible. Not the agreement," and what sounded like creative Korean cursing. When silence fell, she waited before cracking the door open. Hyunjun was standing at the windows, still in his dinner clothes. His phone clenched like he wanted to throw it through the glass. "Hyunjun?" she called softly. He turned, and the expression on his face made her blood run cold. This wasn't the controlled, dangerous man she'd come to know. This was someone on the edge of violence. Go back to bed, he said, but his voice was strained. What happened? Nothing you need to worry about. Bullshit. Zuri stepped into the living room. I'm not some fragile flower. What happened? For a moment she thought he might tell her to leave. Then his shoulders sagged slightly. Nakamura has Sana, he said quietly. The words hit Zuri like a physical blow. She staggered backward, her hand flying to her throat. What? She was taken from her apartment 2 hours ago. No signs of struggle, no witnesses. Professional job. Hyunjun's voice was clinical, but she could see fury burning in his eyes. He wants to make a trade. What kind of trade? But even as she asked, Zuri knew the answer. You for her. The room spun. Sana, beautiful, brilliant Sana, who was working on her master's degree and volunteered at the children's hospital, was being held by criminals because of Zuri's mistake. We have to do it, Zuri said immediately. We have to make the trade. Absolutely not. She's innocent. She has nothing to do with any of this. Neither do you, Hyunjun said fiercely. You think I'm going to hand you over to a man who's been planning your death since the moment he learned your name? My death? Hyunjun closed his eyes briefly, as if he'd revealed more than he intended. Nakamura doesn't make trades, Zuri. He makes statements. If I give you to him, you both die. Then what do? We get her back, Hyunjun said, already moving toward his laptop. Jax is coordinating with our people now. We'll find where he's holding her and extract her. How long will that take? I don't know. Hours, maybe days. Days? You want Sana to be held by criminals for days because you won't make a simple trade? There's nothing simple about this, Hyunjun exploded, his control finally snapping. You think this is just about you and your friend? Nakamura is using this to force a war. If I give in, it shows weakness. Other organizations will see that weakness and move against us. Hundreds of people will die. I don't care about hundreds of people. I care about Sana, and I care about you. The words tore out of him like they'd been ripped from his chest. I care about you more than I've cared about anything in years, and I will not watch you die to save someone else. The admission hung between them like a live wire. Zuri stared at him, seeing the raw emotion he'd been trying to hide. Hyunjun, she said softly, stepping closer. I know you care. But if something happens to Sana because you chose me over her, I'll never forgive myself and I'll never forgive you. His face went completely blank, the mask sliding back into place. Then you'll have to live with that disappointment. No, Zuri said, her voice gaining strength. I won't. She turned and walked toward the front door. She made it 3 steps before Hyunjun's voice stopped her cold. The door is locked. Biometric scanner. You can't leave without my permission. Zuri turned slowly, staring at him in disbelief. Are you keeping me prisoner? I'm keeping you alive. By locking me up? How is that different from what Nakamura wants to do? Because I love you, Hyunjun said quietly, and the words hit her like a sledgehammer. Because everything I'm doing is to protect you, not hurt you. You love me? You've known me for a week. I've known you long enough to know that you're the first person in years who's made me want to be better. Long enough to know that losing you would destroy me. And what about what I want? What about my choice? Your choice is to die for someone who can't be saved. That's not a choice. That's suicide. Maybe, Zuri said, lifting her chin with the same dignity she'd shown that first night. But it's my suicide to commit. Before Hyunjun could respond, the security system chimed. Jax's voice came through the intercom, tense and urgent. Boss, we have movement. 3 vehicles approaching the building. Nakamura's people. Hyunjun cursed, already moving toward the security panel. How did they find us? Unknown. But they're not trying to hide their approach. This feels like a show of force. On the monitors, Zuri could see black SUVs pulling up. Men in dark suits were emerging, their movements coordinated and professional. How many? Hyunjun asked. 12 visible, probably more in reserve. Boss, they're not here for a fight. If they wanted to take the building, they'd have come with more firepower. The building's main phone rang, sharp and insistent. Hyunjun stared at it before picking up. Kang, he said. Even from across the room, Zuri could hear the voice. Accented English, polite and deadly. Mr. Kang, this is Nakamura Hiroshi. I believe we have business to discuss. We have nothing to discuss. I think we do. You see, I have something you want, and you have something I want. Perhaps we can come to an arrangement. I don't negotiate with kidnappers. Kidnapper. Mr. Kang, I prefer to think of myself as a facilitator. I'm facilitating a conversation that you've been avoiding. What do you want? A meeting. You, me, and Ms. Sinclair. 1 hour neutral ground. And if I refuse? Then Ms. Davis will unfortunately become a casualty of your stubbornness. Such a lovely girl. It would be a shame if something happened to her because you couldn't be reasonable. Hyunjun's knuckles were white where he gripped the phone. Where? The Oceanic Grand Presidential Suite, where this all began. How poetic, don't you think? The line went dead. Hyunjun stared at the phone before setting it down with careful precision. We're not going, he said to Zuri without looking at her. Yes, we are, she said firmly, because if we don't, Sana dies. And if Sana dies, whatever this is between us dies with her. Zuri, I mean it. I won't be with a man who let my best friend die to protect me. I can't live with that kind of guilt, and I won't ask you to live with that kind of choice. Hyunjun looked down at her, and she saw the moment he realized she was serious. The moment he understood that he could save her life and lose her heart, or risk everything for a chance at something real. If we do this, he said slowly, we do it my way, my terms, my security, my plan. Agreed. And if things go wrong, they won't, Zuri said, reaching up to touch his face, because you won't let them. Hyunjun leaned into her touch, his eyes closing briefly. When he opened them again, she saw resignation and determination in equal measure. Jax, he called. Prep the team, we're going to the hotel. Boss, this is a trap. I know, Hyunjun said, never taking his eyes off Zuri. But sometimes the only way out of a trap is to spring it yourself. The presidential suite looked exactly the same, but everything had changed. Zuri stood beside Hyunjun as they faced Nakamura Hiroshi across the familiar glass table. Nakamura was not what she'd expected. Instead of a stereotypical Yakuza figure, he was a refined man in his 50s, impeccably dressed and speaking with the cultured accent of expensive international schools. He could have been a banker, which probably made him more dangerous. Ms. Sinclair, Nakamura said with a slight bow, thank you for coming. I apologize for the dramatic circumstances, but Mr. Kang can be quite stubborn. Where's Sana? Zuri demanded. Safe. Uncomfortable perhaps, but unharmed. She's actually quite spirited. She spent the last several hours lecturing my men about human trafficking laws. Despite everything, Zuri felt a surge of pride. That was Sana, turning a kidnapping into a teachable moment. What do you want? Hyunjun asked, his voice deadly quiet. What I've always wanted. A peaceful resolution to our territorial dispute. You see, Mr. Kang, you've been operating under the assumption that Miami is your family's exclusive domain. But times change. My father's agreements were clear. East Coast shipping, specific neighborhoods, limited overlap. Ah, but your father is dead, Nakamura said with false sympathy. And you've become distracted, soft. A man in love makes poor business decisions. The words hit their target. Zuri felt Hyunjun tense beside her. My personal life has nothing to do with business. Doesn't it? Nakamura gestured toward Zuri. You've exposed yourself, Mr. Kang, created a vulnerability. In our world, such vulnerabilities are exploited. Get to the point. I want 40% of your shipping operations, exclusive rights to 3 neighborhoods in South Beach, and a partnership in your real estate ventures. In exchange, I return Ms. Davis unharmed and forget that Ms. Sinclair exists. And if I refuse? Nakamura's smile was cold as winter. Then both women die and I take what I want anyway. The only difference is that you'll have to live with their deaths. The room fell silent. Zuri could feel Hyunjun calculating odds and options. I need proof that Sana is alive, Zuri said suddenly. Nakamura nodded approvingly. Smart woman. He made a brief call in Japanese. Moments later, the suite's phone rang. Answer it, Nakamura instructed. Zuri picked up with trembling hands. Hello? Zuri? Sana's voice was strained but strong. Girl, what the hell have you gotten us into? Are you okay? Are you hurt? I'm fine. Scared, but fine. But Zuri, you can't... The line went dead. Nakamura smiled apologetically. Ms. Davis is quite insistent that you not sacrifice yourself. Admirable loyalty. She's right, Hyunjun said quietly. This ends now. For a moment, Zuri thought he was going to agree to Nakamura's terms. Then she saw his hand move almost imperceptibly, the signal he'd taught her during their security briefing. Get ready to move. You're right about one thing, Hyunjun continued conversationally. I have become distracted. Soft even. Love does that to a man. I'm glad you see reason. But you made one critical mistake, Hyunjun interrupted. You assumed that being in love made me weak. In reality, it's made me absolutely ruthless. The suite's lights went out. In the darkness, chaos erupted. Zuri heard breaking glass, shouts in multiple languages, and the distinctive whistle of something moving fast through the air. Hyunjun's hand found hers, pulling her down behind the heavy sofa as gunshots echoed from the hallway. "Stay down," he whispered. "Jax is coming." The emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in eerie red. Across the room, Nakamura was shouting orders while his bodyguards took defensive positions. But the attack wasn't coming from the hallway. It was coming from the windows. Jax and 3 other men rappelled down from the roof, coming through the floor-to-ceiling windows in a shower of glass and tactical precision. The firefight was brief and brutal. Nakamura's men were professionals, but they'd been caught completely off guard. Within 90 seconds, it was over. "Clear," Jax called out, his weapon trained on Nakamura, who was now sitting with his hands zip-tied. Hyunjun stood, pulling Zuri up with him. His expensive suit was torn and there was a cut on his cheek, but his eyes were blazing with satisfaction. "How?" Nakamura asked, genuine confusion in his voice. "You made the same mistake everyone makes," Hyunjun said, straightening his tie. "You thought the hotel was neutral ground, but I own this hotel. Have for 3 years. Every camera, every security guard, every electronic system. The building's security works for me. The elevators you used, I controlled them. The route through the lobby, I planned it. Even this suite, I had it modified with reinforced walls and bulletproof glass. Well, mostly bulletproof." Nakamura's face went ashen as he realized the scope of his miscalculation. "Sana," Zuri said urgently. "Where is she?" "Safe house in Coral Gables," Jax reported. "Team 2 extracted her 20 minutes ago. She's unharmed and asking for you." The relief hit Zuri like a physical wave. She actually swayed, and Hyunjun's arm came around her waist. "How did you know where she was?" "We've been tracking Nakamura's people since they took her," Hyunjun explained. "The meeting was never about negotiation. It was about keeping him busy while we got her back." "And him?" Zuri looked at Nakamura. "We'll be returning to Japan," Hyunjun said pleasantly, "with a very clear understanding that Miami is off limits, permanently. You can't just—" "Actually, I can," Hyunjun said, his voice dropping to the dangerous whisper Zuri had learned to recognize. "You made this personal when you involved innocent people. In my world, that requires a very specific type of response." He nodded to Jax. "Your flight leaves in 2 hours. First class. I'm not uncivilized. Your operations in the southeast will be transferred to neutral parties, and you will never set foot in Florida again. And if I refuse," Hyunjun's smile was absolutely terrifying, "then you won't be leaving at all." 20 minutes later, Zuri found herself alone with Hyunjun in the presidential suite where everything had started. The broken glass had been cleared, the bodies removed, and the evidence of violence erased with efficiency that spoke of long practice. "Is it really over?" she asked. "The immediate threat?" "Yes. Nakamura won't risk another confrontation, and word will spread that Miami is protected." Hyunjun moved to the bar, pouring himself a drink with perfectly steady hands. "But there will always be other threats. That's the nature of my world. Your world, which is now my world, isn't it?" Hyunjun paused, his glass halfway to his lips. "It doesn't have to be, doesn't it? You said it yourself. Once you're in, there's no going back. I could arrange protection, a new identity, a new city. You could have the life you wanted just somewhere else. Without you, without me," he confirmed, and she could hear the pain he was trying to hide. Zuri walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the Miami skyline. Somewhere out there, Sana'a was safe. Her old life was still there, still possible. But as she stood in the suite where she'd first met the most dangerous and compelling man she'd ever known, Zuri realized that her old life no longer fit. "What would staying mean?" she asked without turning around. "Danger," Hyunjun said honestly. "Always looking over your shoulder, never being completely safe. And luxury you've never imagined. Protection that money can't buy. The resources to pursue your art without worrying about survival. And?" She heard him set down his glass, heard his footsteps as he approached. When he spoke again, His voice was right behind her. "And me," he said simply. "For as long as you'll have me." Zuri turned to face him, studying the man who'd turned her world upside down. He was still dangerous, would always be dangerous, but he was also the man who'd risked everything to save her best friend. "I have conditions," she said. "Name them." "Sanaa's safety is non-negotiable, always." "Done. I want to keep painting, not just as a hobby, but as a career. I want gallery showings and art sales." "I'll buy you a gallery," Hyunjun said immediately. "I don't want you to buy me one. I want to earn one." His smile was soft and proud. "Even better. What else?" "I want honesty. No more protecting me from information. If there's danger, I want to know. If there are decisions that affect my life, I want to be part of making them." "That goes against every instinct I have," Hyunjun said. "But yes, and I want you to tell me again what you said earlier. But this time, say it because you mean it, not because you're trying to justify a decision." Hyunjun reached up to cup her face in his hands. "I love you, Zuri Sinclair. I love your strength and your talent and the way you look at the world like it's full of possibilities. I love that you walked into my life by accident and stayed by choice. I love you enough to let you go if that's what you want, and enough to fight for you if you'll let me." "I love you too," Zuri whispered, and watched his face transform with wonder and relief. "I love you enough to stay, and enough to trust you with my life." When he kissed her, it tasted like promises and new beginnings, like danger and safety all wrapped together, like coming home to a place she'd never known she was looking for. 9 months later, the gallery opening was everything Zuri had dreamed of and more. The walls of the converted warehouse in Wynwood were covered with her paintings, bold, vibrant pieces that captured Miami's soul. Critics mingled with collectors, and the soft murmur of appreciation filled the air like music. "The piece in the corner is selling for how much?" Sana asked, appearing with 2 glasses of champagne. "Enough to pay for your graduate school," Zuri said with a grin. "Twice over." "I still can't believe this is your life now." Sana shook her head. 6 months ago, you were cleaning hotel rooms." 6 months ago, I walked into the wrong room and met the right man," Zuri corrected, her eyes finding Hyunjun across the gallery. He was deep in conversation with a collector, but when he felt her gaze, he looked up and smiled. The private, devastating smile that was just for her. "How's the whole dating a reformed crime boss thing working out?" "Reformed is a strong word," Zuri said honestly, "but he's transitioning. More legitimate businesses, fewer questionable ones. It's a process." "And you're okay with the process?" Zuri watched Hyunjun charm a potential buyer. He commanded the room with quiet authority, but now she knew the man beneath the power, the one who brought her coffee every morning, who listened to her talk about art with genuine interest, who'd had a security system installed in her studio, not to control her, but to protect what mattered to her. "I'm okay with him," she said finally. "All of him. The dangerous parts and the tender parts and everything in between." Across the room, Hyunjun finished his conversation and began making his way toward her, moving through the crowd with fluid grace. When he reached her side, his hand found the small of her back, a possessive, protective gesture that had become as natural as breathing. "How's Miami's newest art sensation feeling?" he asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Overwhelmed, grateful, slightly terrified." "The good kind of terrified?" "The best kind." "Ladies and gentlemen," the gallery owner's voice cut through the chatter, "our artist would like to say a few words." Zuri stepped forward, accepting the microphone. 6 months ago, I was working 3 jobs and painting in my spare time, dreaming of a moment like this. I thought success would come from perfect planning and careful steps and playing it safe. She paused, her eyes finding Hyunjun's. "But sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. Sometimes you have to walk through the wrong door to find the right path." The applause was thunderous, but Zuri was only speaking to one person now. "This collection is called Collision," she continued, "because it's about what happens when 2 worlds crash into each other and create something entirely new, something beautiful and dangerous and absolutely worth fighting for." Later, after the last guest had left, they stood together on the rooftop of Hyunjun's penthouse, looking out over the city that had brought them together. "Any regrets?" he asked, his arms wrapped around her from behind. "About which part? The art career? The dangerous boyfriend? The complete upheaval of my entire life? Any of it. All of it." Zuri leaned back against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. Below them, Miami sparkled like scattered diamonds. "No regrets," she said softly. "Not a single one." "Good," Hyunjun murmured against her ear, "because I have something for you." He pulled back slightly, and when Zuri turned around, he was holding a small velvet box that made her heart stop. "Hyunjun, I know it's crazy," he said quickly. "I know we've only known each other for 6 months. I know my world is complicated and dangerous. Hyunjun, but I also know that you're the best thing that's ever happened to me," he continued, dropping to one knee as the Miami skyline glittered behind him. "You're my heart, my home, my reason for wanting to be better. And if you'll have me, all of me, forever, I promise to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret walking through that wrong door." He opened the box, revealing a ring that was absolutely perfect, elegant, unique, and clearly chosen by someone who understood her completely. "Zuri Sinclair," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "will you marry me?" For a moment, Zuri couldn't speak. She thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, tired, struggling, dreaming of a life she couldn't quite imagine. Then she thought about the woman she was now, successful, protected, loved beyond measure. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, yes, absolutely yes." The ring fit perfectly, of course. Everything about Hyunjun was perfect. Perfectly dangerous, perfectly devoted, perfectly hers. As he stood and kissed her under the Miami stars, Zuri couldn't help but smile at the beautiful irony. She'd spent years trying to find her place in the world, never realizing that sometimes you don't find your destiny, it finds you. And sometimes it finds you in the most unexpected place of all, behind the wrong door with the right man, at exactly the perfect moment to change everything. The end.